Tonight's edition of the Garage Shop Insider is going to be incredible. Why? The one and only Dave Marcis joins us with his wingtip shoes and his Goodyear hat to talk about his great career in racing. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another great edition of the Garage Shop Insider. I'm your host, Tim Packman. We've been having some great conversations about the Dodge Daytonas and the Ford Talladegas, and it's going to continue on with a man who's a legend in this sport, and the mark he left behind and what he's done on the track is incredible. You know him the minute you see him by his wingtip shoes, his Goodyear hat. He is. Little build up here for you. I got to do this for you. 5 decades of racing, 883 starts. He's a 5-time Cup winner. Holds the record for the most consecutive Daytona 500s at 32, and it was 33 to set the record for the starts. And 1978, you raced for Rod Osterland, the part of that team, and some guy named Dale Earnhardt took over the next year as the rookie. We know the rest is history. You're a car owner. He's a car builder. He was the first driver to have an internet company as a sponsor. Prodigy was the company back then. And Harry Hyde once described you as you would be a great champion if you weren't so stubborn. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dave Marcis. Dave, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And your Goodyear hat on, and you're all set. It's perfect.
Yes, sir.
First of all, why the Goodyear hat? Why is that just something you just started and stuck with?
I like the hat. It feels good.
Okay,
it fits good.
Yeah.
And Goodyear have been some great people for the sport,
right.
and I have gotten help from Goodyear throughout the years. And I believe in helping those who've helped me.
That's good. So you, happy belated birthday, turned 80. You look great. Really?
March 1st,
80.
turned 80. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Good for you. What do you remember about the Talladegas and the Dodge Daytonas when they were out there racing and on the track, and the ones that you had?
Those were some pretty exciting years. I mean, when that war, I guess maybe you'd call it,
Aero Wars, yeah.
Among the brands and having the fastest cars there, and Ford, started working on theirs, and Larry Raskeb at Chrysler Corporation, I think, was one of the main guys behind the Chrysler Corporation project, and it was quite interesting. I mean, they come up with some pretty nice equipment.
So when you first see these rolling out, you're like, my gosh, look at those.
Unbelievable.
And then they
You couldn't believe it, and I was aware of the testing going on and all, and because I was an independent owner-operator, most of my career, I was quite busy at the shop and all, so I didn't get to do any of the early testing.
Right.
But when I got a phone call from Larry, he said, you need to take your car up to Nichols Engineering in Highland, Indiana. And at that time, Nichols Engineering was the Chrysler representative for the Chrysler products. And he said, we're going to change it into a Dodge Daytona for you.
Okay.
And so, didn't take us long to get that stuff loaded and get up to Indiana.
So you're all for that, right?
Yeah.
So the first time you got behind the wheel, the first time you went out on the track on a Dodge Daytona, you remember what track it was?
A Talladega.
Okay, perfect.
And they needed to have 500 units.
Right.
And so we actually went up there and we worked night and day on that car and all the guys at Nichols Engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And when we left Highland, Indiana, we went right straight to the racetrack to Talladega, unloaded the car.
That was it.
Put it through inspection.
You went right from the shop directly
from the shop to the racetrack. Didn't
hoping,
go home, nothing, no clean clothes or nothing. And put the car through inspection, and the very first lap on the racetrack was 197.5 miles per hour, and a right front tire came apart.
By you?
Yes.
So you went 197 miles an hour?
The first lap with that Dodge Daytona at Talladega, yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, it's like you can't believe that speed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it was quite comfortable, really. I mean, you didn't really know what to expect.
Right.
Both tire companies at that time were having a problem with the tires, coming apart. Really not a defect of the tires and all, but, I mean, that's when we just first start reaching that 200-mile-an-hour mark. And that racetrack is it's built for speed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's comfortable at that speed. It really is.
So you found out after you did the 197, because there's no speedometers in here. When they told you that, what was your first reaction?
You can't hardly believe it.
Wow.
I mean, it's like, really?
I'm still here.
Yeah, you don't know.
But then you said the right front went down on what, lap two?
Well, I had the casing come apart.
Okay.
That's what was happening. The
Oh.
casings were just the tread was leaving the casing.
Okay.
I guess is what. And you know, those were bias ply tires in those days, and they weren't made for that speed.
So you just do what you had to do to keep going on. When you
Yeah, I didn't hit nothing. I felt it because I was aware of people having problems.
Right.
And you know, I got it slowed down and back in the garage.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
'Cause at that mile, yeah, especially with the wing on it. But so the wing, Bobby was talking, Allison was talking about how it just put that back in.
It really planted that car on the racetrack, yeah. And then the top blade, you know, we could adjust that a little bit too. I think.
The one on the top of the wing there a little bit, yep.
Yeah, and I don't remember there was a degrees that we could move it that NASCAR had. We put a protractor up there, and I don't know if it was 60 degrees,
Wow.
40 degrees, but we could get more downforce if we needed it.
So when that thing went in the corners, your confidence was
Well, I'll tell
Good.
you, one person that really helped me with the entering the corner with the wing cars was Smokey Unick.
Smokey Unick.
And I was pretty good friends with Smokey.
Yeah.
And he come to me one day and he said, I've been watching a lot of these guys out on the racetrack with them Dodge Daytonas. And he said, they're not driving them right. And he said, half of them won't listen to me because he said they're stuck in their ways. And he says, you're young and full of piss and vinegar. And he said, you'll probably listen.
Nice.
So,
You listened.
so Smokey said, when you come to the corner like they normally start to enter the corner,
Right.
he said, make that straightaway longer. He said,
So
go
going-
3 or 4 more car lengths, and when you turn that thing, just jerk it in there. He said, it is not going to spin out.
That was his advice.
That was Smokey's advice.
And your thought was,
I tried it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you know, Smokey, he's not behind the steering wheel.
it's point one, yeah.
So I tried it, and there was better readings on the stopwatch if
Okay.
you were brave enough to drive it straight ahead further and then just snap it.
That's a heck of a way to find out you can do it. A guy that's not even behind the wheel, but he was so
Yeah, but
smart technically. He knew
Smokey was,
Yeah.
he was ahead of everybody for many years and a lot of things.
and then people were after him for being ahead of him. We don't go into the NASCAR and him.
But there was a lot to that, and then especially at Daytona and Talladega, and that was the 2 main tracks that he was talking about. But once you got used to it, but you know, it's like the first time I ever went to Daytona. I came off of short tracks in Wisconsin, so quarter miles. We had a half mile or so at the fairgrounds, but when I first got on the track at Daytona, I mean, it's like everybody, the speeds in those days.
right.
You can run around here flat foot. Well, everybody tells you that, and you kind of, well, yeah, I know, but your brain and your foot don't always work together.
Well, especially if you're coming off of short tracks.
Well, that's it.
Yeah,
And
so
and
that's- you're
my
used to-
first time at Daytona, I mean, it's like they said I don't have to lift. Well, I had that in my mind, but my foot lifted.
So what made the jump? You went from a short track right to Daytona. That's big.
That was my move, yeah, from
Okay.
them little tracks to that big racetrack. Yes.
Was that you're doing as an owner, or was it someone else that you were driving for? or
No,
was
as owner.
it, okay, that
Yeah.
was your big jump.
Yeah. When I drove in there and came out of that tunnel and looked, turn 1's way down there,
Right.
and that's turn 4 there, and I'm like, wow,
Remember,
I can't believe it.
what kind of car did you have for that?
A Chevrolet.
Okay, I was just curious. All right,
67 Chevrolet Chevelle.
and then you love the
I
track.
actually went there to run the ARCA race.
Okay,
And in the ARCA race, a car that I was drafting behind blew a clutch up and it went through my front bumper and radiator. We were actually loading our equipment up to go home. And a NASCAR official came over and said, you can still enter the Daytona 500 until 5 o'clock yet this afternoon if you want to. And bring your car over there and put it through inspection. So Larry Weirs from Weirs Chevrolet Sales in Bangor, Wisconsin, had helped me with the car, and he actually bought the first car. We talked about it and said, well, you know, we're here, and there's 2 feet of snow in Wisconsin, so why don't we just stay and do it? So
So
we did that.
so you went to Daytona with no inkling to run the 500. You went for the ARCA race.
Yep,
Oh my gosh!
yeah.
Wow! And
yeah.
then because
So we put it in the NASCAR garage,
yeah,
disassembled it, magnafluxed it, put it back together,
Right.
practiced, and ran the Daytona 500 and finished 20th.
That was the start of 32,
35 years.
32 consecutive and
Yeah.
33 altogether.
Yeah.
To hold a mark like that, what does that mean to you? Knowing that,
Well, I guess a lot of people say it means a lot, but I mean, I was so tied up in what I was doing and working on my own stuff. I mean, I wasn't counting them.
Okay.
It just happened.
right?
That was my job. That's what I done for a living. And it's just like a guy working in a factory. They work so many years before they retire. And everybody said, when are you going to quit driving? And I said, you can't retire until you're 65. That was always my answer. So,
Well, you went to what, 2002, right? Was that,
yeah, I
that was your-
retired in 2002.
2002, that's
Yeah.
right. And your last race was the,
The Daytona 500.
of course, you
yeah.
put a button on the whole thing.
Yeah, the first one there and the last one. But it was getting, it was too much
Right.
as an independent owner-operator without a major sponsor to keep up. I mean, everybody was getting airplanes and flying back and forth, and we were on the road driving and stuff, and it was about half the time I was wore out.
And you have time to rest now? Are you caught up on
I
that rest?
rested during the race.
Nice. So the Daytonas, when you were out there racing against the Talladegas, when you guys worked together, especially like the plate tracks,
Well, yeah, I mean, at a Daytona and Talladega deal, and that's where those cars were designed for, and that's where we raced them. You worked with anybody that you could get hooked up with and draft, and if there was a good person to draft with,
Right.
to work your way to the front of the pack, because that's what it took to get to the front of the pack. You had to get in line and you had to draft.
who were some of the guys you like drafting with?
Oh, I mean, Bobby, Donnie. One guy I didn't like to draft with was Buddy Baker. Buddy was,
Go ahead. Why?
he just, I don't know, he didn't stay in line. He would come to you before the race
Uh-huh.
and say, now remember, we have to stay in line. You got to stay in line. He'd be the first guy out of line. Richard Petty was a good guy to draft with. Richard didn't really care for Talladega all that much. I don't think. I mean,
Right.
Richard was, he was always there and in the hunt, but the latter stages of the race, is when he would really try and make his moves. And David Pearson was a great guy to draft with.
He's consistent, right?
Yeah. You could get behind
Mm-hmm.
David and stay right there, and he didn't move around much. And you could, he was just a good guy to draft with.
I think, 1975, you finished second to Richard in the points championship, correct?
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
as close you got was second.
Yeah.
Darn it.
Yeah.
So when you went to the other tracks, not the like the plate tracks with the Daytonas, the handling there was still good on like the Rockinghams, and like, did you race these at Richmond too in places?
Well, I guess I'm the only guy that ran a wing car on the short track,
Right.
and it came about because we had gone to Martinsville and qualified, and the race got rained out, and I think we lost a week or something, and I had wrecked my short track car,
Okay.
so I didn't have no option but to take the wing car, and so I took it to Martinsville.
How was
And
that?
It's too big for Martinsville.
I'm just trying to get around Martinsville.
Yeah,
right?
and the brakes weren't set up right. But
Okay.
actually, Leonard Wood came and helped me and told me what he said. I'm gonna tell you what to do, because he knew I had to do that with your brakes. And he said, you take them big brake drums and stuff off and put them on the rear of that car so
Okay.
you can get the car to squat down instead of nose diving, because they had a ton of downforce with that nose
Yeah.
to begin with, and that really helped me a lot. But yes, Leonard and Glenn Wood gave me that suggestion.
Who else helped you along the way? Other people.
Well, I mean, in NASCAR racing and in the era that we're talking about, everybody helped everybody. I mean, we all borrowed parts from each other. I could go to the Petties and get parts. They even at times, even though they were factory backed, had parts of mine on their car.
Yeah.
And if it was a Chevy, a Ford, or a Dodge, everybody pretty much helped everybody. You could go ask them, what are you doing here? I can't get into turn one just quite right, and what shock you running, what caster you got in the front end, the camber, and stuff like that. And everybody was very helpful.
Kind of like short track racing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
so you came from that background, so you
I
know
came
it was like
from that
you could walk
background,
over a pit
yeah.
and go, "Hey, do you have?" Or people would say, "Hey, what do you need?" And that's so to carry that over to the big leagues,
Yeah.
good to see.
Like when I first came here with the Chevrolet, I had some problem with oil pressure problems. I went and talked to Bobby Allison. Bobby was running a Chevy in those days, and he told me what he'd done for an oil pickup and what he'd done in the oil pan. So I did that to my car. I had trouble with push rods,
All right.
and I knew about Smokey Unick. I didn't know him, but he's right there in Daytona.
Right.
I went and talked to Smokey about push rods. He asked me what was happening, and I told him. He asked me what lifters I had in the car. I told him. He said, that's part of the problem.
Okay.
He said, you got to get the GM lifter in there. He said, you go down to the Chevrolet dealership and talk to Marshall. He knows what you need. And,
Go to the dealership, yeah, unheard of
yeah,
today.
so, I mean, he helped me, and then he also gave me a phone number for General Motors for a gentleman by the name of Bill Hall, and he said, I'm going to give you a set of push rods to put in your engine, and when you get back home, you call Bill Hall up at General Motors and tell him you want some of these push rods.
Okay.
Well, when I done that, Bill Hall told me there was no such thing as what I was asking for. I said, I have a set. Smokey gave them to me. He said, well, they're not available yet.
Okay.
So I didn't get any
All
from
right.
General Motors.
Smokey had them, though.
Smokey. But no, everybody was very helpful.
Yeah.
Very. That's just how
Good.
it was those days in NASCAR.
So your first win, first Cup win,
Martinsville. With Harry Hyde and the K&K Insurance Dodge.
okay.
It was, quite a thrill. I had a lot of good finishes, top 10s, 5s, and stuff like that. I was always qualified good. I was always up there, but I didn't have the money and the people and all the kind of stuff you need to finish.
Yeah.
I guess to get the wins.
So do you remember that day? Remember when you came across and the checker flag was yours and
Yeah,
the victory
it's,
lane and everything that, kissing the pretty girls and all the stuff you got to do there?
It's a great feeling. I mean, it's what you work towards. It's what you're trying to accomplish.
And that was TV coverage as prevalent then?
Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah,
if that was TV coverage on that race or not.
Because you got it back home in Wisconsin. You have your following back there, like every driver does, the hometown people.
Yeah.
And so your shop was up there, correct? Or was you down here now?
No, I started up running out of Wisconsin, but then I moved down here in 1969.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, in the
All
fall of '69.
Got it. But I'm just...
You need to be, I had to be here because these guys were home working on their cars, and I was driving up and down the road.
Right, you're a lot of time. 15 hours.
Yeah.
Back then, or whatever. That's a
Yeah, well,
that's
back
30
then with the roads and all that, it'd take more
than
like
that.
24
Sure.
hours.
So that you're wasting 2 days driving to the track.
Right.
So of the 5 wins, is there one that you came out of it going, wow, that one was incredible, or were they all have the same level of importance to you? Or
Well, I mean, the first one's probably always the most
Right.
important. It's the hardest to get.
Yeah.
It's, and I don't know why that is, but that is.
So when you get the win, so like the next week, you walk a little taller into the garage, right? You walk
Well,
in
I mean,
like,
everybody's congratulating
Right.
me and all, and that's a good feeling, yeah. And when I drove that car, I didn't have to do much work on it,
Right.
you know what I mean? So I'd be rested up better and could walk around, I guess, and politic a little bit.
yeah. So the Talladegas and the Daytonas are racing against each other. The program goes away. And I know a lot of people are like, we were really onto something there. So when that went away, do you remember how that felt with?
Well, for an independent owner operator, it's very tough. I
Right.
mean, I lost a car that I had, and I actually got hit twice. I got hit when the Chevrolet Laguna. I had one of those, and so that they outlawed that eventually too. So it was tough on us as an independent owner operator.
So where'd you go from there?
Back to General Motors.
Okay,
products.
got it.
Yeah.
Which car was it?
Chevrolets,
Okay.
and I had a Caprice
Yep.
for a while, and a Lumina, and then the Monte Carlos.
Okay. When the Talladegas and the Dodges were competing against each other, I know that it was the Aero Wars, and it was a war because
Right.
the manufacturers are trying to outdo each other.
Right.
You drivers are trying to outdo your fellow Talladega and your fellow Dodge Daytona competitors. What was that like? What was the atmosphere like in those years when you guys were out there? Like there was 29 wins. Incredible what was done. Leroy Yarborough was out there, and
Yeah. I mean, it was
Donnie.
very competitive, but again, we all worked together pretty good, and talked amongst each other, what their car was doing versus our car, and we know we got to get together in drafts, and you'd probably try and get 4 or 5 guys lined up before the race that you could draft with,
Except Buddy.
which usually didn't help.
Right.
Didn't make no difference when the race started.
Everyone changed their mind.
It would change.
That hasn't changed today because there's still guys say, yeah, we talked before the race, and then 5 to go. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
But maybe that's the way it should be with 5 to go.
yeah, like
really.
all bets are off.
But if you can help each other all day and stay up front and try and stay out of the trouble. I mean, the wrecks they have nowadays and stuff.
It's amazing.
Like Daytona was just a fantastic mess in my mind. I mean, to tear all the stuff up, they tear up even before the race, let alone in the race.
Right.
I mean, it's we didn't.
Took care of your stuff.
Well, we just didn't race that way. I
Right.
mean, they just slam each other in the rear end and turn them sideways, and
Just,
that is not racing.
okay.
I mean,
All right, if you could change one
we
thing.
got
Go ahead.
together and we had arguments, but
Sure.
but we settled them in the garage amongst ourselves,
with TV cameras
generally
in your
right
face.
away and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Biggest dust up you had with someone.
the biggest what?
Biggest dust up. The biggest argument or
Well,
discussion, let's say.
Maybe Dale and I. We were always friends,
Mm-hmm.
and then when he got the Australian ride and we were at Martinsville, he kept hammering on me, and I finally got mad and spun him out. And
He was a rookie then.
yeah,
Yeah, 1979 rookie. Yeah,
and he wouldn't talk to me for 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah, he just avoided me.
But he earned it when he inspired you to do that. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, he did.
That's it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done that.
That's right.
So when you finally talked, what was it
we
like?
had a motto in those days, and this came from Dale. After 2 months, he come up to me one day. I think we were at Rockingham, and he grabs me around the neck
Yeah.
and jerk you over with that big smile, and he
Right.
looks at you. And he says, "Remember that deal with Martinsville?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I had that coming." He said, "I asked for it." He said, "My daddy always told me if you had a problem with anybody on the racetrack, don't carry it down the road.
Right.
Settle it right then and there." He said, "You did, and you did."
Right.
Meaning I had a problem and I handled it.
But it took him 2 months. then.
And it took him 2 months.
Right.
But we became the very best of friends after that. We hunted and fished together, and I did a lot of his testing.
Yep. So you did a lot of testing for Childress for a while.
Yeah. I actually tested the car with Larry McReynolds and the crew and all that. Dale won the Daytona 500.
98.
Yep.
Oh, really? So you did, okay.
Yep.
Well, it's good that you helped out like that.
Yeah. He thanked me in Victory Circle
Yep.
for. Yeah.
That'd be pretty special.
It was.
Yep.
Yeah. We were close friends.
Yeah.
I miss him.
A lot of people do. Yeah.
Yeah.
98, I was down there with CBS Sports, and I'll never forget just the crowd.
Yeah.
The crowd just didn't stop. It was like nobody left. Everyone was still staying there. And like,
Yeah.
it was, so to be part of that's good. Did you get a ring from it? Did you get one of the rings?
No, I didn't.
Oh, man, you should have got one of the rings. Darn it all. So with Richard, with your association with him, that came about through the Dale. So the testing you did, that helped you for
That
your
helped
driving?
me tremendously
Yeah.
because I was able to test, and they helped me. And I never took any money as far as getting paid in cash.
Right.
I always told Richard, help me with some parts
Right.
because, they buy 2 or 3 sets of cylinder heads and naturally would test them and run them on their dynos and use the best.
Right.
The other ones that they put back on the shelf were still probably better than what I had. So if they could help me with parts and things like that, which they did,
Yep.
it was a tremendous help for me. When Richard had things he needed tested, like in Daytona and Talladega, Richard supplied me with a speedway engine, with restrictor plate engine, we call them in those days, for those races.
Okay.
So I knew that I had some parts maybe that, they wanted to prove of that they're 500 miles with no problems before Dale raced them because Dale was always running for the championship.
Right.
So I would race that engine, which was great for me, better than anything that I could afford on my own.
Right.
So it helped me tremendously.
And that goes back to like we were talking about the friendships and helping each other out and the relationships.
Right.
How do you think people perceived you? Like as a good guy,
Well, I hope
easygoing
so.
guy. I mean, the times I've been around, you've always smiled.
Yeah.
You've always been happy with what you're doing. I never heard miserable Marcus or anything like that. So you put out that you were enjoying what you were doing.
Well, I mean, I don't mind working.
Right.
I was raised on a farm, and my dad had a garage and a wrecking yard, and I've always had good work habits, and I like to treat people the way I like to be treated. I'm friendly with everybody. I wanted to race for a living, and I decided to do it and try it, and I did. It was hard.
Yep.
I mean, I built some of my engines. I built my transmissions, my rear gear. I mean, I've done everything. I always tell everybody I drove the truck, I drove the car, I wrecked the car, I fixed the car. I did everything you need to do.
You're a roofer. You did everything from the roof down, right?
Everything. Bobby Allison always would say to me, you know, Dave, I wish they would take like a kit car and bring it to our shops, and the drivers would have to put them together, like build the rear gear, build the transmission, build the engine, and then we'd have a race. Everybody get their cars done, and we'd have a race. He said, how many cars you would think would be at that race? I said, well, I don't really know for sure. He said, well, there'd probably be a lot of cars there, but he says, probably you and me would be the only two that would finish the race, because none of these other guys know how to build a rear gear, or they don't know how to build a transmission.
But you had that ability, and that helped you when you were on the track, because you knew what you had underneath
absolutely,
your hood. That's good.
So Bobby's theory was that them two cars would probably finish his and mine.
If you could change one thing today, do you still watch when you can?
Yeah, not as much as I did. I
sure.
mean, it's just not interesting. I don't know. And I hate to say that about the sport. I love the sport. I mean, I was involved in it 10 years in Wisconsin short tracks, 35 years in NASCAR. But I don't know. This people that I talk to, I still travel a lot. When I first retired, everybody, I mean, the sport was changing a little bit then, but a lot of people that were avid race fans always taped them, and then they'd watch them later. Nowadays, you talk to people, they don't even tape them anymore. They just aren't watching. And the grandstands, you look at all the pictures from years ago. The grandstands are jam-packed, full, all over. I mean,
one change you would do?
Well, we need to get back to the basics. I think the TV series is trying to tell them what to do, how to run their show. They need to get back to racing. I just and everything's too equal.
Right.
You know, I was involved with the IROC series. I tested those cars for 32 years.
32 years. Wow.
Yes, sir. And I was one of the main guys that made all the chassis decisions, the shocks and the springs and sway bars and everything. And a lot of the NASCAR drivers would like, well, you want to do this, you got to do that. But I'm like, well, Dale was one of them.
Of course.
And I said, Dale, you guys drive the stock cars every week. Bobby Ray Hall and Rick Mears and Danny Lazowski and Steve Kinzer.
Legends.
I mean, them guys don't got stock car experience. They're in cars with more horsepower, better downforce, better tires. And I said, I'm trying to make those guys competitive in this series. You guys can adjust.
Right.
It's hard for them to. I think I did a good job of it. Steve Kinzer won a race. He was a dirt tracker. Danny Lazowski. I mean,
they were some great races, those IROC.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
But see, the NASCAR series to me right now is all too equal. When they have a wreck, they wipe half the field out.
Right.
For one thing, you can't get stopped at 200 miles an hour. And we always had 10 or 12 really good cars. And then the next group was another 10 or 12. They weren't as fast, but they were racing just as hard.
Right.
And all the way to last place. The last 10 place guys were generally racing each other. So we had 3 or 4 packs of cars, and everybody was racing. Everybody's got fans, grandmas, aunts, uncles, kids, and whatever. Those people were in the grandstands. They pay the bills.
Exactly.
That's always been my theory.
Okay. And it's a valid one, too.
Yeah, I think so.
Biggest memories you have, like, of the Dodge and the Talladega cars?
Well, I mean, they were good cars, and I hated to see them go away. They were pretty cars, too.
Beautiful.
I mean,
They are amazing. Yeah.
To see them the first time we seen them with that wing and all, I mean, you're like, you know, we didn't have that stuff in them days, so it was kind of hard to put it together until you drove it and got a feel for it. But
I mean, just to see old races, like if you go to YouTube and you punch in, 'cause I was doing some of that, when I was going to talk to you guys, and I get caught up in it like a 12-year-old fan, like, oh, I'm supposed to be like It's just amazing. It's just
Yeah.
it's good, and you were part of that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Legacy you want to be left behind. When I say Dave Marcis was very good at being an driver owner, you made it through I mean, you're one of the last independent driver owners.
Yeah,
I think.
I was, I guess, yeah, and probably one of the more successful ones too. But I guess that's maybe what Harry Hyde talks about a little bit, maybe being bullheaded. But I was determined.
Well, you have to be.
Yeah, you have to be. And when I first came down here, basically, other than Freddie Lorenzen coming before me, I was the only one kind of coming out of the north or whatever down here. So, I mean, you can't just let people run over the top of you.
Right.
So I fought back.
It's good.
And you get a reputation that, like, don't mess with him
Perfect.
because he's going to pay you back.
Bird.
I guess, I don't remember if it was Dale, or I guess it was Dale told Rusty one day, he's got a mind like an elephant.
Most racers do. They can't say they have for dinner. They can tell you what happened 4 years ago on the 8th lap at Richmond.
Yeah. But, it's I was determined, and I had to hold my own ground. That's just what you got to do.
People still recognize you out and about.
Yeah, a lot of places that I go. Yeah, and of course I always wear my Goodyear hat.
That's good. That's perfect. What's the biggest thing they say? The biggest memory they share with you?
Well,
they ask you about?
I believe this or not, but I probably sign at a minimum of 25 autographs a week in the mail.
Oh.
And I was gone for 1 week, a week ago in Wisconsin. When I got back home the other day, I had like 90 autographs to sign. The little baseball.
Yeah, sure.
I call them baseball cards.
Yeah.
But and everybody writes a nice letter.
Sure.
About the sport in those days, and they miss it, and like this guy says, my grandpa took me to my first races when I was 6 years old, and I got to watch you in a lot of your career, and so I'm kind of amazed that I get that much mail like that.
So you might be out of the sport, weekly, but you're still on the minds of people and fans.
It seems that way, yes.
How do they get in touch with you? Someone they go through a website? Do they have an address, or do they?
Oh, just my address.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's fine. People obviously have. They share it. Hey, here's his address. Send him something.
I think during this coronavirus deal, a lot of them ain't got stuff to do. So they're doing things that they probably want to get done and never did, and they got them cards later. Because a lot of them are the very first cards.
Oh, yeah, the trading cards, yep.
Yeah, when Max.
Oh, the MAXX, that's right. Those lines came out.
Yeah.
So when you do that, that's got to be a good feeling that people still.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for your time. This has been amazing, and I appreciate you
Thank
talking
you.
with us. And it's you're a legend in the sport, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on. Appreciate
All right.
it.